Well, the Big Ten is back-to-back national champions as a conference with Michigan and Ohio State the last 2 years. Will another team or one of those teams be able to make it three in a row, get a dominant stretch going for the conference like the SEC once upon a time was able to do? For everybody new around here, I am Colin Bashnagel, your host here at Bash the CFB Show. If you go over to TikTok right here, Bash the CFB Show is what you need to look up. There's a lot of interaction there, a lot of fun comments, a lot of fun debate. It is definitely a good time over there, so make sure you go over there if you have TikTok. Like the video if you end up liking the video, and subscribe for more college football content. Always keep that in mind. I'll come back to that at the end of the video, and if you're still around, that'd be awesome. We got a loaded week here as we got the Big Ten right now. The SEC should be dropping later tonight or early tomorrow morning. This is going to be a fun time then after that to go through all the conferences, get a Heisman Trophy winner picked, and then pick a college football playoff all the way through before we get to the game previews and everything and how we're going to structure it over here. I'm excited for the jump that this channel is about to take. All right. So we start with the best Big Ten offensive player. Here's how it goes with these previews. We've done the ACC. We've done the Big 12. Go ahead and check out those videos if you haven't already. But you do offense, defense, and then you get Coach of the Year predictions before we reveal my personal predictions for what the standings are going to look like. Again, getting every single game is very hard to do, so I'm trying to make it as good as I can. We're going to reveal who I believe will be in the conference championship, who I think is the biggest sleeper team in the conference, and the most overhyped team in the conference as well. So with the best offensive player, some players that I thought about, you got the best quarterback in the Big Ten in Drew Aller over at Penn State. You also have Damon Williams over at Washington, who's expected to break out. Same with Dante Moore, the quarterback over at Oregon. I also really like Jacoby Lane over at USC to have a major breakout year. Nico Iamaleava is another guy not to forget about. But I ended up going with Jeremiah Smith. I think Jeremiah Smith is the best player in this conference. I think it's easy to select the best offensive player in this conference with Ohio State. Just another receiver in this one could potentially be the best of them all. Now, when we go to the defensive side of the ball, Coy Parrish and Dylan Thieneman are two safeties that I really love. Parrish, of course, from Minnesota, and Thieneman transferred from Purdue over to Oregon. They're going to be great players. Then you have Zane Durant and Zakee Wheatley on Penn State. Those two guys are absolute studs. A.J. Harris at corner too. Penn State has a lot of really good players still on that defensive side of the ball. Ernest Hausman is a guy I'm very high on from the University of Michigan. Heck of a linebacker. I expect for him to rack up a lot of tackles this year. Him and Jayshawn Barham are a great tandem at the linebacker position. You also got Muhammad Kamara over at Indiana. I'm really, really high on him. But I think the pick, I hate to go with the same team, but I think it helps me validate it that a lot of folks out there have these two guys as the top two players in college football. It's Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs, the safety at Ohio State, expecting him to play a little bit of nickel, showing that versatility, playing in the box, being closer to the ball. I think he could have a couple of forced fumbles and a couple of interceptions as well. Maybe a touchdown or two sprinkled in on defense. This guy is going to be a freak. He's going to be amazing to watch in his junior season. He's already been excelling. As a freshman at Alabama, he excelled. As a sophomore last year, he excelled. And if he could take even more of a jump in his game somehow, I think that would be insane. But as we move to Coach of the Year, a lot of times you see guys that are a part of teams that haven't had the recent success that end up having success in the current season. Obviously, with the guy with the past videos, there's a little bit of a mixed bag with what I ended up selecting. And I think this year for the Big Ten, you're getting a very easy pick. Though you have some good coaches like Jed Fish, I think Lincoln Riley could potentially have a huge bounce back. You never know if Kirk Ferentz could pop off a couple of really big-time wins. Jonathan Smith, could he level up Michigan State in year two? But I'm going with Matt Rule over at Nebraska. Year 3 at a program for Matt Rule has been good history twice, and the third time why am I to think that history is not going to repeat itself? I think that he's going to get Nebraska very close to the playoff, if not into the playoff. So that will transition us over to the Big Ten standings. I'm excited to reveal this to you because I have spent a lot of time on this conference trying to figure out the puzzle that it is. So I'm going to break it down the way that I know how to. So let's show these standings right here. All right. Michigan and Ohio State at the top. You could see it right there. Number one, I got Michigan at 10-2 overall, but 8-1 in conference. They are going to be the lone defeat for Ohio State the whole regular season, in my opinion. And I think if that happens, given the nature of tiebreakers, it will be Michigan versus Ohio State in the conference championship, which would just be wild. We were introduced to this possibility with the leaders and legends when Nebraska joined in 2011. And then after the 2013 season, leaders and legends were done and they moved back to East West, or moved over to East West, I should say. Well, now that we don't have divisions, this is definitely possible. And this is something that could have happened a couple of times in the East-West era. So I think that there is a very good chance that if Ohio State does what I think they could do in conference play especially, then Ohio State is going to be in the Big Ten championship playing Michigan. I think the biggest games that concern me for both of these teams outside of playing one another, Michigan has road trips at USC and at Nebraska. Ohio State has road trips at Washington, at Illinois, and of course they host Penn State in conference. Now, let's talk about the rest of this conference. Obviously, you see I have Penn State 11-1, 8-1, but because of the nature of tiebreakers and how unbalanced these schedules are, see, here's the thing about no divisions is you're going to get situations like this where Michigan doesn't play Penn State, but Penn State's going to be left out because they didn't beat Ohio State, and it's going to be record of against common opponents. Penn State also does not play USC. That, to me, is going to be Michigan's lone conference loss. This is a very tough situation for Penn State to be in, but also, are you really going to complain? Instead of taking the trip to Indianapolis to play a game against Michigan that is relatively meaningless, especially if you lose, you get that week off and you get a home game more than likely at 11-1, maybe even a bye. It's very possible that you see Penn State at 11-1, not going to the Big Ten championship, get a top 4 seed. I mean, we've seen it done before. Alabama made the college football playoff. Ohio State made the college football playoff without going to their conference championship game. So what if Penn State fans out there that don't like the fact that they're not in the Big Ten championship, what if this is a good thing? What if not only, now this is a lot of missed football, but what if not only they don't have to play on conference championship weekend, but they also get the bye straight into the quarterfinals? Just floating it out there. Then we have a cluster here, a huge cluster, and I did have a typo with Illinois. I'm not even going to really worry about fixing it, but if I post this graphic, I will fix it before I do that. We have a bunch of 9-3 teams. I have been increasingly high on Washington, but I'm a little bit scared of Washington there at 9-3, just because I don't know what that defense is going to look like, and I don't know what their depth of answers really will be. Like, I know they're going to have Denzel Boston, but he's not like that dominant alpha that you saw from like Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State, or even like some other guys that have taken over some games. Not sure if he can do that on a regular basis. So what else do they have? Jonah Coleman is a freak running back, and I love Damon Williams and what he was able to show in the bowl game last year. Now, USC, I have standing alone in conference play at 7-2. I am very high on USC. And if USC beats Notre Dame, they're a lock for the college football playoff in my eyes. Number one, if they're good enough to beat Notre Dame on the road, I think they're a playoff team. But number two, even at 9-3, with the schedule that they have going 7-2 in conference, could they potentially still sneak into the playoff? And I got Oregon at 9-3, 6-3 in conference. Let me spell this out for you. Oregon going on the road to Penn State, I think, is a definite loss. I really think Penn State needs to get over that hump and win, and I think that's how they're going to be able to get over that hump is beating Oregon at home in a whiteout environment. Then a road game at Iowa. A lot of these teams have seen, a lot of these Big Ten teams that have been here a while have seen some highly ranked teams go into Kinnick Stadium and come out with a weird loss. In fact, one of the least weird losses was them blowing out number 2 Ohio State. Because a lot of times what happens is it's like a weird, like, remember when they beat Michigan 14-13 and it was a game-winning field goal because they were down 11-13? Or when a top 5 Penn State team went to Kinnick Stadium and it took I believe it was Jawan Johnson, who had a game-winning touchdown as time expires to end that game. That's a weird place to play. So that's my second loss. And then Washington as my third loss could potentially, and I say potentially because you never know how it works out, knock Oregon out of the playoff. And I think the biggest reason why is because you have the obvious 3. Then you have USC potentially. And if somehow, some way, a 5th team at 9-3 gets into the playoff, or even if it's just a 4th team and USC's not in there, Washington would get in at 9-3 over Oregon with the head-to-head. I think Washington has been a demon for Dan Lanning, and I think that this is going to be a very dangerous game there. Number 7, though, I have Indiana. I don't see them falling off too much. I think they're going to be really good. I definitely don't think they're going to have the strength of schedule, though, to get into the playoff at 9-3, but it's a strong enough schedule to where I can easily find 3 losses. How about my sleeper team? It's Nebraska. Cover up Nebraska a little bit here, but Nebraska to me is going to be one surprise win away from going to the college football playoff. They play Michigan, they play Penn State, and then I have them, dropping another random game in there. But if they could somehow win one of those 2, beat Michigan or Penn State, they're in the college football playoff in my mind. I am sold that Nebraska is going to be over their win total. I am sold that this Nebraska team is ready to take a hurdle, and I think Nebraska is potentially going to make the college football playoff this year. My overhyped team is Illinois. I think they're getting overhyped because of all the returning production, but here's what I'm going to say. They had 1,500 yards between Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant, and the other receivers that are returning had 500 yards. And never mind that. When you turn on the film of Illinois, do you see Hudson Clement being as good as either of those guys? Do you see Elsie being as good as either of those guys, Collins or Beatty being as good as either of those guys? The answer is simply no. And with those guys, they had so many close calls. Go watch the Purdue game. Go watch the Rutgers game. We're talking middle to bottom part of the conference here. This Illinois team is overhyped because they won a bowl game in which South Carolina did not play very well, and it shows the depth of the Big Ten. Well, guess what? I think the Big Ten's still very deep, and I think Illinois has got a tough draw. I am not really, as an Ohio State fan, concerned about going on the road to Illinois too much. I'm a lot more concerned about Washington. And when you talk about a fan and who you are concerned about, yeah, that's why Illinois is overhyped, because they don't scare me whatsoever. I think Illinois, their ceiling, I guess, would be a first-round loss in the college football playoff, but I just don't see it. I don't see them making the playoff. 9-3, 8-4, and yes, that's supposed to be 8-4. That is the most probable record. Now, these next 2 teams, and I'm going to go quick. This video has been a little bit longer than most of the conference previews, but I always knew that I was going to take more time on the Big Ten and the SEC. Don't sleep on Michigan State. They're going to be a thorn in the side. Josh Pate was talking about it. When you look more into Michigan State, year 2, Jonathan Smith, if you're like me and you think Michigan or Jonathan Smith is a really good head coach, 6-6, 7-5 is around where they're going to be. But Penn State has to go on the road to Michigan State. Obviously, I don't have them losing that game. They better watch out. Michigan has to go on the road to Michigan State. It's a rivalry game. Michigan's usually up for that one. Don't sleep on Sparty. They're going to be a thorn in everybody's side this season. So is Iowa, even at 7-5. This isn't a Big Ten West schedule where you could just Iowa your way to 10-2. But this is also a team that could Iowa their way into a big time upset. So even with a big time upset, even with beating Iowa State out of conference, I still think that their schedule is tough enough that they go 7-5. Call me crazy. I think they're going to get off to a hot start. I had them going like 7-2, I want, or 6-2 maybe to start off, and then closing out very cold because number one, I think teams will figure out what they're doing offensively and be able to shut it down. And number two, it's a tough close to the schedule. It just is. Minnesota, I don't have making a bowl game. I've gone back and forth. I think they could be really good. They're going to be very dangerous on defense. We'll see how Drake Lindsay looks at the quarterback spot. They're going to be able to run the ball for sure. Another team, though, that's going to be dangerous. And so is Rutgers, too. I think Rutgers needs to find a way to replace the production of Kyle Monangai, but Rutgers will be a feisty team out there. Northwestern has a certain ceiling, and I don't think that ceiling includes upsetting some of the big dogs. I think they are going to win 2 or 3 conference games, probably miss a bowl game at the end of the day. So there's where I lie with Northwestern. UCLA, I took a win away and added it to Michigan State. UCLA's schedule is pretty brutal. A lot of these travel spots kind of suck. And I think this UCLA team, though, could definitely be much better than 4-8. I see their ceiling probably around 7-5, maybe 8-4, if everything goes great. But I don't really believe that UCLA is going to be able to deal and navigate through this Big Ten schedule very well. Wisconsin, I also have going 4-8, which is an absolute disaster, and I really don't want to see it. But they have no identity. They already had to get rid of an offense coordinator after 2 years of Luke Fickell because it just was not a good marriage. And now what does Wisconsin look like? I just have no idea. You bring in Billy Edwards. All right, I don't know what that's going to look like. I wasn't very impressed with him last year. And speaking of his former school, Maryland, I have going 0-9 in conference. I think that the wheels fall off and they fire Mike Locksley during the season. And the most winnable games are towards the back part of the season. So if they're already checked out, and trust me, if Maryland fires Mike Locksley, their players are going to be checked out. I think Maryland's going to be tough. Now, here's an interesting thing about Purdue is I don't think they have talent, but I really think they're going to be feisty in November. So though I have them going 0-9, part of that has to do with schedule in November, but you better not sleepwalk past Purdue because I think they could scare a couple of teams in November. And I'm in particular looking at Indiana, who might be 8 or 9 wins deep when they play Purdue last week of the season. So that's how it shapes up for me in the Big Ten. I got Ohio State and Michigan in an all-time rematch in the conference championship. Winner is likely going to get a bye in the college football playoff alongside Penn State. Loser is likely going to get the 5 or 6 seed. So we'll see how it all plays out in the Big Ten. We're going to predict in the next couple of days all the conference championships. So I'm excited to do that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next